All right, now we're going to be talking a little bit about nervous tissue. All right, so nervous tissue is a specialized type of tissue found in the brain of the spinal cord and nerves. And there's really one type of nervous tissue, but it contains a lot of different types of cells. And for now, since we're still just on the basic histology, we're going to talk mostly about the neurons, which are the big cells here, and then just mention that the smaller ones are called glial cells. But we will get into all the different types of glial cells when we talk about that in chapter 12. So the neurons are going to be the big cells. I say they look like spider-like cells. This is an example of a multipolar neuron, meaning that it has one axon, which is this long projection here, and then it has multiple dendrites over here. And some neurons are going to look like that, but some of them have different structures, and we'll learn more about the different structures of them in chapter 12 once again. So the dendrites are the receptive end. They're sort of like the rabbit ears of your TV antenna, and they receive signals, as well as the cell body or soma from other neurons. And then this is the nucleus in the inside, and then the inside of the neuron has something called Nissl substance, which is really going to be the rough ER and the free ribosomes, and it stains sort of darkly. And so you'll see it's easiest to see the soma or the cell body, or perikaryon, with the Nissl substance and the nucleus. And then we can sort of see a lot of times the process is sort of heading off, but usually they don't stay like in the plane of the slide, so you can only just see the beginnings of those processes. And so we have, these are the dendrites, and then this one coming out here is the axon. And then they're wrapped up by these Schwann cells or neurilemmacytes, oligodendrocytes. They have a couple of different names. Oops. And so this is going to be called a myelin sheath, and it's made mostly of lipids. So these don't stain very well. So any of the areas where you have a myelinated axons, you're going to see sort of a glassy, like open area. All right, so let's go on to look at a couple of different nervous tissue specimens. So the first one we're going to look at, this is a brain, and it's a rat brain, so it's fairly small, fit on the slide. And it's been stained with a special stain, Golgi's stain, using Goldie's method, and it's a silver stain that randomly stains a limited number of neurons and their processes. So we can see the neurons, or some of the neurons, and their processes here. And so we can go to see some different areas where you can see how like long and sort of complicated these cells are, and how their processes go in lots of different directions, right? So this area here is probably the cell body, and then we've got maybe an axon coming out over here. And so we can see that there's a lot of, neurons are big and they have a lot of different processes. Let's see, we can see some over here too. And so whenever you see sort of these big sort of spider-like cells, like here's a good example over here where we've got a cell body here with some dendrites probably over here, and then an axon coming off. And there's lots of them in the brain. So this is a special stain, so it won't look like this with some of the other stains. All right, so the next thing I want to look at is the spinal cord. This one is stained with H&E, so that hematoxylin and eosin, which is sort of that normal stain that stains the cytoplasm of things pink, and then it stains the nucleus dark, and it also stains the Nissl substance dark. And so here we can look at sort of, this is a cross-section of the spinal cord, and we'll be talking about this in chapter 14, but this is the gray matter, and the gray matter is the part that has all the cell bodies. And so we're going to see these big spider-like cells here. These are the big neurons over here. So these guys, right, the ones we saw before. And so these are the neurons, and you can almost, like, it's hard to even see the nucleus in a lot of these because there's so much Nissl substance. And you can see this, it's got some processes that are coming off, and it looks a little bit spider-like. This one's got some processes coming off. We can follow them around. And then we have a lot of other little nuclei sort of surrounding it, and these littler nuclei are going to be the glial cells, or those supporting cells. Here's another example of a spinal cord with H&E. This one is really cool because this is the whole cross-section of, we have the muscles of the back, then we've got, this is the vertebrae, So this is the back part with like the spinous process, and the transverse process is over here, and the body. This is the vertebral foramen. And so this is the spinal cord within it. And so it's kind of cool that you can see like this is spongy bone down here. This is an example. It looks just like what we looked at for spongy bone. And then this is going to be, and that's part of the vertebrae. And now here we have the spinal cord, right? And the spinal cord is made up of nervous tissue. And if we zoom in, we can see this part is the gray matter again, and we can see some nice big sort of spider-shaped neurons over here with the Nissl substance within. Here's another neuron, and you can look through, you know, find the little neurons over here with some of their large projections. And then these are also a special type of glial cell that's going to be lining the central canal of the spinal cord, the ependymal cells. So, and those are stained with H&E. And then we can see over here that we have some muscle in cross-section, right? Because this is skeletal muscle in cross-section. These are the muscles along the back. So we have lots of different tissue types on this slide. It's a really interesting slide. But for now, we're going to focus mostly on this nervous tissue, right? Now, I do want to mention that this is the nervous tissue. This butterfly shape here in the middle is the gray matter, and so the gray matter is going to house the neurons, right? So we can see the neurons here with their Nissl substance. And then over here, remember I said this is the white matter, and it's made of myelinated axons. And you can see how all of these little open areas, that's where the myelin sheaths would be going around the axons, and they're lipid filled and they don't stain very well. And so that's kind of the myelin sheath with the axon in the middle. And that's the white matter. All right, so now I want to look at another spinal cord stained with a special stain, Kreslov violet. And this is just going to sort of highlight the neurons and the Nissl substance, and so we can see them, I think, a little bit better here. So you can see this is the nucleus with the nucleolus, and this is the Nissl substance around it. So this is a big neuron with a big cell body here, or soma. And we can see that the dendrites and axon are kind of going off in different directions. We can see here's another one. You can see here. So these sort of big cells that have these like, spider-like like extensions coming off of them, they're going to be the neurons. And so again, this is also the spinal cord, right? So we can see there's a lot of pretty neurons over here too. You can see these are motor neurons. So once again, so more of these big cells with these extensions coming out. So these are going to be examples of nervous tissue. So whenever you see these sort of big cells that look a little bit spider-like, they have some extensions coming off of them, especially if you see the Nissl substance all around, those are going to be neurons, and so therefore it's nervous tissue. And then the other little cells around them with the smaller nuclei are going to be the glial cells. Right, and that's all I've got for nervous tissue.